Amsterdam has a famous erotic museum in its red light district, and admission is €8 or about $8.69. Las Vegas now has an erotic museum, and admission is $31.95 including fees. Somehow Las Vegas is now home to many of the world's most expensive museums, and almost all of them have only opened in the last few years. I love Las Vegas and have been there countless times over the decades, so I've been interested to hear that a whole collection of new museums, quote unquote, have been opening up to help keep visitors busy. Each of them has sounded super cool, but the other thing they have in common is that when I look more closely at them, they are all way more expensive than I expected. Las Vegas actually used to be a cheap place to visit a couple decades ago, and even though that's not really true anymore, it still seems bizarre that in many ways it's now the most expensive place to visit in the United States. I thought it would be fun to compare the prices of these new museums in Las Vegas to the prices of the most famous museums around the world, and you'll soon see that it's pretty shocking. Just to start with a clear example of what I'm talking about, one of the new Las Vegas museums is called the Museum of Illusions, which looks really fun and like something I would love. But it turns out that the Museum of Illusions is actually a fast-growing chain of similar museums that started in Zagreb, Croatia in 2015 and already has 40 locations, about half of which are still being built. Out of the locations that are already open, the admission price ranges from just under $7 in Belgrade, Serbia, to just over $35 for the New York City one. The Las Vegas one is an eye-popping $43.15, which is somehow 20% more expensive than the New York City location. Paris is another expensive city, and yet the location there is less than half the price, and these museums are almost identical to each other. Speaking of Paris, you could instead visit the famous Louvre Museum to see the Mona Lisa or David for only $18.47 instead. This is Roger from priceoftravel.com, and the website has hundreds of articles that show how much things cost for travelers in over 200 places around the world. I thought it'd be fun to compare prices of some of the world's most famous museums with the prices of some of the new so-called museums in Las Vegas. Las Vegas now has something at the Luxor Hotel called Discovering King Tut's Tomb, and admission is $33 with no hidden fees. Whoops, here's something called a facility fee on the next screen, so it's actually $36.50. I'd imagine it's an impressive place and there is a virtual reality thing involved, but there are no real artifacts. Or if you were in Cairo, you could see the famous Egyptian Museum for $14.56 and see thousands of real specimens that are actually thousands of years old. If you're in downtown Las Vegas and want to take a break from the 24/7 smell of marijuana smoke, you could learn about the world of organized crime with a visit to the Mob Museum for $34.95 just for the basic ticket with no interactive experiences. Or if you were in Italy, and I'm not saying there's a connection, you could go to Florence and visit the famous Uffizi gallery and see the Birth of Venus by Botticelli or a variety of Da Vinci's or Michelangelo's for only $13.04. In fairness, the Mob Museum is probably more interesting for most people, and it's got a speakeasy bar as well. In Las Vegas, you could visit the National Atomic Testing Museum, which is an affiliate of the Smithsonian, for $30.74. It looks pretty cool, and highlights include a shell casing of a nuclear bomb, a piece of the Berlin Wall, and 2 actual pieces of the World Trade Center. Or if you were in Xi'an, China, you could visit the Terracotta Army and its museum featuring thousands of life-size clay warriors that were built and buried by a lunatic emperor over 2,000 years ago to protect him in the afterlife for $16.84. At least the Atomic Museum is pretty close to the Strip. Next up is Las Vegas's new Punk Rock Museum, which in true punk fashion is the most expensive museum in the city, or at least on this list. Who wouldn't be willing to pay a jaw-dropping $46.91 for a general admission ticket so you can see a huge picture of the band X or the actual saxophone that Fear played on Saturday Night Live? Seriously though, this is one I would definitely visit myself if it was around $20 and I was already drunk. Or if you were in Athens, you could visit the new and impressive Acropolis Museum for a bit over $16 and even less in low season. Our next entry is another new chain museum with 8 locations in the US, Europe, and Asia, with 8 more being built, called the Paradox Museum. It looks a lot like the Museum of Illusions to me, with many of the same forced perspective gimmicks you see in mystery spots. The Las Vegas branch only costs $28, but suspiciously this chain also started not long ago in Zagreb, Croatia, just like the Museum of Illusions. Either way, $28 actually seems reasonable compared to the others. On the other hand, if you're in Rome, you can pop into the Vatican museums for $18.47, where you can snap some photos of the Sistine Chapel ceiling right after the tour guide reminds you that it's forbidden. Now, these last 2 Vegas museums aren't quite as new or as expensive, and I think they're actually worth it. You can visit the famous Neon Museum a bit north of downtown for only $20 during the day or $25 after dark, and only $8 more for a guided tour. I visited a few years ago and they've added quite a bit since then, so I look forward to going back. And lastly, Vegas still has Liberace Real and Beyond, which is the current exhibit at the Nevada State Museum and is only $18.95 and features items from the old Liberace Museum, which opened in 1979 and only cost $3.50 at the time. It closed in 2010, and this display only goes through April of 2024. By then, all of the living Liberace fans will have seen it. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments if you've been to any of these museums and if they seemed worth the money. And as always, please like and subscribe for more videos of how much things cost around the world.